Hey guys, it's Rosa here. I hope you're all having a really lovely day. I'm here today to share with you my long-awaited Erin Pinafore tutorial. I'm so sorry it has taken so long for me to put together. It took me quite a while to squeeze in the sewing time and then the editing time, but I'm really pleased with my dress and I really hope this video is helpful for you guys. As always, if anything is confusing, please do drop me a question down below. And yeah, I hope you enjoy turning your Erin skirt into a pinafore. If you don't have the Erin skirts by Sew Over It, then this tutorial should work pretty much the same for any other button-down skirt pattern which you have, so let's get started. For this project you will need about 2 meters of medium weight to heavyweight denim. This one didn't have any stretch at all. You'll need some iron-on interfacing. I had about 1 meter here. You'll need some scissors for both cutting paper and for cutting fabric, some matching thread, of course your pattern for the Erin skirt, or it would work similarly for any button-down mini skirt, and you'll also need of course some pins, some dungaree clips and a Sharpie marker, some greaseproof paper for drawing out your pattern pieces, and lastly some hammer-on buttons. Firstly, we're going to need to cut out our pattern pieces, so we need to cut out 2 of the skirt front, 1 of the skirt back cut on the fold, 2 of each of the pocket pieces. We're going to need to draft your own straps, as of course the Erin skirt doesn't come with its own straps, so here's the dimensions which I used. I then cut the end into a little slightly angled point just so it would fit more neatly onto the waistband. You'll need to cut 2 straps from your fabric. So I've popped the dimensions of the Erin Pinafore bib on the screen. These are perfect for the size 10 skirt, which is the size which I cut. So if you're a little bit bigger or smaller than that, I reckon the same dimensions should be fine. But perhaps if you're more than 1 size bigger or 1 size smaller, so if you're not an 8, 10 or 12, I would say just maybe increase the measurements by 1 or 2 centimeters on all sides. Or decrease likewise if you're a size 6 or smaller, just to make sure that it looks right and the proportions look good with the skirt. So the first thing I'm doing is marking out the depth of the pinafore bib, and I'm just marking out 28 centimeters. I'm using the straight edge of the greaseproof paper to make sure I have it in a straight line. Next I'm going to mark out the width at the top, which is 17 centimeters. I'm using the pattern envelope here just to make sure I get that perfect right angle to make sure that it's completely perpendicular to the original line that I drew. After that, I'm going to do the same for the bottom width of the pinafore bib, which is 22 centimeters. I'm going to make that line at the bottom. These are the 3 measurements which we've got so far. We've got 17 at the top, 28 for the length of the pinafore bib, and 22 at the bottom. Now we're going to do a little bit of sketching. If you have a French curve, that would be great for this. I don't, so I just do this kind of bit by hand. I'm going to be sketching in a lovely curved line for the edge of the pinafore bib. Once you're happy with your curve, you can go right in with your Sharpie marker and go over that line so it's really, really clear. Now your bodice pattern piece is complete, you can go right ahead and cut it out, and you'll need to cut 4 of these from your fabric. Lastly, we're going to be drafting our waistband piece. This is really similar to the Erin waistband piece which comes with your skirt pattern. All we're going to be doing is, instead of cutting it in 1 and folding it, is we're going to be cutting 2. So the length needs to be the same as the Erin skirt pattern piece which you have, and the depth needs to be 7.5 centimeters, and you're going to need to cut 2 of these. I decided to cheat a bit on this step and just use my original Erin waistband piece, and I just folded it to 7.5 centimeters wide and then cut 2. You'll also need to cut 1 out of iron-on interfacing and apply that to 1 side of your waistband. While you're over at the iron, it's time to apply some iron-on interfacing to your button band as well. So grab your skirt front pieces, and you're going to need to cut 2 strips of interfacing just a couple of centimeters wide. This doesn't have to be overly exact, and then apply that just about 1.5 centimeters from the edge of the skirt center front. This step is the same as your Erin skirt, so what you'll need to do is just turn over 1.5 centimeters on the edge of that front skirt and then turn it over again where the notches are. And if you look really closely on the bottom edge, you'll see notches, so you know exactly how wide to make your button band. Once you've pressed that button band in place and it's matched up with the notches, you can go ahead, pop your pins in, and you're ready to sew. While I'm sewing up that button band, I also like to do my stay stitching along the pocket opening, which is this diagonal line here. Stay stitching is just a regular line of straight stitches, which is about 1 centimeter from the edge. Now it's time to start assembling our bib, so we're going to grab another strip of that iron-on interfacing and apply that again down the center front of your bib piece. You will only need to apply that interfacing to 2 of the pieces, because 2 of the bib pieces which you've cut are going to be used as the lining. So now we're going to attach the front of the bib piece to the lining piece, and we're going to be pinning all around 3 of the edges, making sure that we've got right sides together and all the corners matching. Then we can head over to our sewing machine and sew all around those 3 edges on the bib. Once you've sewn around those edges, you'll need to clip your curve. So you can see here I'm doing little cuts all the way down that curved edge which we drafted earlier. We're going to then layer our seams on the other edges. Layering your seam just means taking one of the seam allowances on each edge and cutting it to half the width, and this will just mean that it lays really nice and flat and crisp. You may have also noticed that I've clipped the corners on the bib piece just to make sure those corners turn out nice and flat. So your bib pieces should be looking a little bit like this, and I've decided to take 2 little scraps of interfacing, which you can see here, and apply those to the 2 corners, the opposite corners to where the other interfacing is, just to make sure that when I put the buttons in there, they don't rip. Now we can go right ahead and turn our 2 bib pieces around the right way, and they're looking a lot neater. What I've chosen to do now is some top stitching, just because I think it looks really good on denim. I'm going to top stitch all the way around both bib pieces. Now we're going to move on to inserting those pockets, so we're going to need to grab our Erin skirt pocket facing piece, which has this diagonal line here, which matches up to the diagonal line on the skirt front piece. We're going to put those pieces right sides together and pin straight down that diagonal line. You've already done your stay stitching here, so you don't need to worry about it stretching out. Once you've got that pocket facing piece pinned in place, you can fold it open and attach to that at the curved edge the pocket bag piece. These pieces are exactly the same size, so they should pin together really nice and neatly. Once you've pinned both pocket pieces together, you should have something which looks a bit like this. And we're just going to head over to our sewing machine and sew along both those lines that we've pinned, that diagonal line at the pocket opening, and also all along that curved line round the pocket bag. I also like to zigzag both of these seams to make sure they stay really neat. But of course, if you would rather use your overlocker or a different way of finishing your seams, that is completely up to you. Now I'm going to go right ahead and do a little bit of understitching, so I'm just going to pull that pocket piece and the seam allowance away from the skirt front. So I'm just going to do a really neat line of stitching to attach the pocket bag to the seam allowance. I'm going to do it really close to that edge where they've joined together. I'm going to do it really close to that seam line, as close as I can. Now you can see our pocket is really starting to come together. I also decided to do a little bit of top stitching along this edge here to make it look really cool, like a proper denim pinafore. Now all your sewing in your pocket is finished, we're just going to pin together the sides and the top to make sure that the pocket bag doesn't twist around while we're sewing. If you'd like to tack these in place, you could also do that, or just go along with a wider stitch on your sewing machine. Now we're ready to move on to our skirt back piece, because our front is pretty much ready to go. So we're going to pin in, first of all, the darts. So we're going to mark the tops of the dart pieces, and then we're going to fold it right sides together and pin straight along that dart to a point. Once I've pinned in my darts, I'm going to go straight to my sewing machine and sew along them. Now it's going to start to get very exciting. We're going to assemble our skirt at the side seams. So as you can see here, I'm just folding the skirt fronts over the skirt back, and I'm going to pin straight down those side seams, making sure I catch in those side seams, those pockets. After I've sewn those side seams, I'm going to go right in with my zigzag stitch to finish the edge. I decided I wanted to then go right ahead and top stitch the seam allowance down so it looks like a real denim skirt. There's lots of names for this type of seam. I think one is a machine felled seam, and that's what we were taught it was called at school, just to kind of give it that really cool denim look. Now it's time to move on to our straps. We're going to grab both our strap pieces, fold them both in half like you can see here, and then move right on over to our sewing machine and sew straight along them. I'm also sewing across the straight end of the strap and leaving that end which has the diagonal cut open. Now I'm grabbing my scissors so I can layer that seam. Just like we said last time, it just means taking one of the seam allowances and cutting it to half of its width. Once you've layered the seam, you can turn your straps the right way round. This takes a little while because they're quite narrow, so put something good on the telly. I'm going to head over to my sewing machine and do some top stitching on my straps, just so again it gives it that really cool denim look. I'm going to be top stitching all the way down both edges and along the bottom so it looks a bit like this. Now it's time to attach our waistband piece to the skirt, which we've now assembled, which is very exciting. So now I'm going to grab the piece of the waistband, which I haven't interfaced, and pin it all the way along the top of the skirt front, making sure it overhangs by about 1.5 centimeters at each end. Once I've pinned it on, it should look a bit like this. I'm going to head straight over to my sewing machine and attach that waistband. Now things start to get very exciting. I'm going to attach the bib as well. I'm going to make sure I pin it on again about 1.5 centimeters from the end of that waistband piece. That's just so that when I go out right ahead and sew on the other waistband, I've got some space there so I can turn it around the right way. So So you can see I'm going to be flipping the bib over so I can then attach it right sides facing onto the skirt and the waistband piece. I'm going to pin right along the line there. Once you've done that on both sides, you can go right ahead and just attach your straps in the same way. I decided to make them cross over in the middle. I thought it would look really cute. And this is what it should look like once you've got both bibs and both straps pinned on. You can tack those in place if you'd like to, and then we're going to go right ahead and grab our other waistband piece, the interface piece, and we're going to sew that on the top, going down both sides and all along the middle. You'll notice when I'm sewing here that I've also turned over a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance on the bottom edge of that interfaced piece, just so that when I turn it over, it's really neat and tidy. Once you've sewn all along the facing of your waistband, you can go right ahead and turn it the right way round and pin it down, just like you can see here. You can see now why we turned over that 1.5 centimetre seam allowance, just so it looks super neat and tidy. This makes sure that all the messy bits of your waistband are hidden inside. I like to then get my needle and thread because I love finishing the waistbands by hand, that's just me, and you can go right ahead and sew all the way along using a slip stitch, just to make sure that the waistband facing is attached to the skirt. I then decided to do some top stitching on there as well, so I gave it a good press and then sewed all around all 4 edges of that waistband piece, again just to give it that denim look, but this bit is optional. Once you've done that top stitching, it should look a little bit like this. I really do love working with denim because there's lots of opportunities for cool top stitching, but again, if you're not a massive fan, it's not essential. All of this top stitching is not essential. You can just pick the bits that you really want to do. Now we're approaching the end of our project, so we need to mark out all those lovely buttons and buttonholes. So I'm just going to grab my tape measure here. I chose, having looked at lots of inspiration pictures, to put 3 buttons above the waistband, 1 button on the waistband, and then 5 buttons below the waistband. And I measured these out, and I think there are roughly 9 centimetres between all of them. I like to mark out the placement of my buttons and buttonholes using pins, and then I go right ahead to my sewing machine and work all of those buttonholes. That is 9 buttonholes in total, which is quite a lot, but actually when you're working with like a medium weight fabric, they do go in pretty easily. You'll then need to attach your hammer-on buttons. The way I like to do this is by pushing the pin all the way through so I can see where the button should be. And then I push the little nail which comes with the hammer-on button through where that pin is. And I do that all the way along so all the pins are in place, and then I can go right ahead and hammer them all in at the same time. Don't forget, you'll also need 2 hammer-on buttons at the top of your bodice so that you can attach your little dungaree clips to those as well. So in total, you'll be attaching 11 hammer-on buttons and making 9 buttonholes. The last things we need to do is, of course, hemming our skirt. I actually didn't film myself doing that bit because I thought you guys know how to hem a skirt, and I do think it's quite good. You can definitely do a machine hem on a denim skirt because it just looks perfect. And then we'll need to attach our dungaree clips. You'll need to try on your dress to do this bit so you can make sure the straps are the right length. And then I just head over to my sewing machine and sew across that strap. And then ta-da! Your Erin Pinafore dress is complete. I really do hope you enjoyed this tutorial, guys. and then it was helpful. Please do let me know if you've got any questions down below, and I would love to see if you have a go at this tutorial, so do tag me over on Instagram if you share what you make, because yeah, I really love seeing that. I think it's really exciting. The Erin skirt is an awesome pattern, so thank you so much Sew Over It for making such a nice pattern. Yeah, and that's everything for today. I do hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up if you did, and I will see you again very soon. Bye!